above the clouds, and people believe literally heaven was in the clouds. Pretty close, like 5 miles up, you're in heaven. Okay? Then, and that basically everything went around the earth. So Copernicus comes along and he said, oh no, you've got the sun and now the earth goes around the sun. Alright, where's God? A lot further away. A lot further away. Now, then we discover through, various people like Herschel and so on, discover, Jupiter, Saturn, they're observable, but then we discover Neptune, Uranus, even Pluto by the 1930s. Where's God? He's getting further away if he's there at all, right? Then, what's his name? Hubble with his telescope in the 20s, the expanding universe. Right? And he realises that those little clouds that we thought were little clouds that we call nebula, just meaning cloud, actually that's a whole galaxy, and we're just one, we're in a galaxy and we're actually looking at a galaxy. Each galaxy has got 100 billion stars and there are 100 billion galaxies. Where's God? Even further away, like astronomically far away. What's happening? What's happening to God? It's getting further and further and further and further away. Yeah? And so, you don't end up with total proof, but science is always just about probability. Just about probability. And let's have a look just on the basis, this is just one aspect of science. There are many, many others. For example, Darwin and all the subsequent, you have to call it, don't use the word proof, but it's so close to proof. The proof that we have emerged from animals and apes. That is just incontrovertible. You cannot, it's really not up for debate anymore. There's so much evidence for that. But, okay, we'll just stick with this aspect. Okay, we've got 100 billion galaxies. So before we had this, as I said, this medieval view, we just got one Earth and God's eye kind of watching us, And you can imagine with that view of the world, it's pretty kind of logical that you develop this idea of a watchful God, pretty close. But what does modern science say? You've got 100, we live in a galaxy with 100 billion stars. Okay? And there are 100 billion, I'll just try to do it, and then I'll have to rub it out. Hang on, 100 billion, sorry, go back to where I was. That's only 100 million, isn't it? I need 100 billion. Right, so there's 100 billion stars in our galaxy, the Milky Way, alright? And now there are 100 billion galaxies at least, so I'm just going to do another 100 billion. There's 100 billion. Now I have to alter my commas, don't I? Okay, so that's how many stars there are in the universe. Okay? So the probability, if we just take Christianity as one religion, I mentioned this to James once before, that is the probability that, God selected this particular planet out of all of those stars to bring, and you look in the Bible, it says, His only begotten Son. One Son, only. It's not like there was intelligent life everywhere and God sent one to one star, one to one planet, one to another, one to another. There was only one. Right? Out of all of those stars, do you really think, what's the probability that God's going to send His only Son here? That's the probability. Now, if that's the probability, if someone said, okay, jump out of that window, jump out of that, we're on a 157-storey building, jump out of that building, that is the chance of you surviving. In other words, you're going to base your life on that probability. So you're going to base your life on Christianity and the probability. That is the probability you will survive. Jump. With that probability, would you jump? Would you base your life on that probability? I certainly wouldn't. Yeah? I rest my case. Yeah, that's what science has shown us. And that is the probability of being selected. I think it's so low. It is not disproof. It's not disproof. So I've said before, proof and disproof are almost impossible. Disproof is easier. in science. You can actually disprove things. Thus far, you could argue we haven't disproved God, but God has got further and further away and less probable down to that point. That is so minutely, microscopically probable that I'm not going to base my life on something, being true at that rate. As I said, I'm not going to jump out of that building if that's the probability.
But that's all based on the assumption that God is spirit.
No, it's not. No. It's based on the fact that the Bible says He sent His Son to this earth.
But I mean, that possibility.
And He may not be a physical thing. You may argue He's an abstract creator. But it says in the Bible, and Christianity is based on the idea that Jesus is the only Son of God.
Jesus is the only Son.
Yeah, well, that's the probability that Jesus is the only Son of God.
What about Islam say in different times, different prophets came for the increasing the awareness of the aim of their life?
Yeah.
What about that? Maybe they don't believe, they believe in Jesus, but they don't believe just only Jesus came from God.
Holy books say all sorts of things, they all have different interpretations, and partly that's why there's the conflict there is. But we're going away from science here. I mean, the question is, science and religion. So, I'm just demonstrating one thing about science and religion. All right, moving on. Let's come back to Earth. We'll come back from the galaxies.
One day, John, we have a time you explain more about what is the theory of building. Because we believe we build something, we make something. How we can say there is not any designer or creator?
Okay, the watchmaker idea.
The creator of this.
Yeah.
Because we create something as a human.
Yeah.
For example, computer, we create computer.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And so anything complex, the idea that complex things must have a maker. The famous one was a watch, and that's why I mentioned the watchmaker. It was at Berkeley, or late 18th century. Somebody said, okay, a watch, this beautiful complex mechanism, is made. It has a creator. Therefore, the universe has to have a creator. Not necessarily. Sure, all human things have a creator, but it doesn't mean we can generalise and say all non-human things have a creator. That's an example of an analogy that breaks down as soon as we decide to extend it. It's not necessarily true that everything needs a creator. Lots of things aren't created by a creator. A seed that falls, grows, and there's no one creating that tree. Lots of things outside of human activity don't have a creator. Everything outside doesn't have a creator. Then if you say, but God created it, well, now you're using your conclusion as part of your argument. You can't do that. That's circular logic. That's another fallacy, right?
It's so complex.
Yeah.
Philosophy is so complex.
All right, let's move on. 10. It's all good fun, though.
Yes,
You should be a
It's
lawyer.
good fun arguing.
Information.
Yeah.
But we need time to explain.
Look, I'd be happy, sometimes to have a whole session on this. I was thinking of making a PowerPoint on it.
In your classes,
Huh?
in your classes on the upfront.
On
road.
Tuesday.
Tuesday,
I'm
you have
not
this
doing them at the
argument?
moment, but I might start them again because I'm feeling better. Hooray! Thank God, I'm feeling better. No, thank prednisolone and Western science. I'm feeling better. Great. Not just Western science, shouldn't say that. Science.
You can tell.
Science everywhere. 10. Darwin is also seen as a blasphemer by the mullahs. Now, I've actually explained that word, do you remember?
Yeah.
Blasphemy. But if you'd forgotten, 10. Second last paragraph. Interestingly, Darwin is also seen as a blasphemer by the mullahs. So there's talk there about even the sentence before it, and no Republicans pursuing the presidency can admit to the belief in the satanic doctrine of evolution. Yeah, so Republicans on the right will not admit that they believe in evolution because the Christian right will reject them electorally. Interestingly, Darwin is also seen as something by the mullahs. Mullah, we've talked about that word too, haven't we? I know we had a discussion about mullah and imam. Remember that? Ahmed and Wali mentioned. So Darwin is obviously, he's a negative figure, isn't he, in relation to Mullah's Islam. So Darwin, that word blasphemer must be a negative thing. Agreed? If you know Mullah, it's a religious person.
Please.
Yeah. Darwin is also seen as a something by the Mullahs. Darwin, of course, relates to evolution. So the Mullahs would have a negative view. And Darwin would be seen as someone who's against religion. Yeah? And that is the answer. Blasphemer, somebody against religion. So a guessing, bit of a guessing game there. So we move on to the real tricky one. What about the quote by Steinbeck? So as I say, so look, next reading, I'm giving you this because this is structured like the next reading assessment I'm going to give you, which will be, that's the ordinary assessment. You know, if you're trying to get a 3+, just do that and forget about that. If you've got your 3+ and you want to try to get your 4+, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Then these are questions which I thought were kind of about the level of a Year 12 native, English class at high school, and that's tricky. So, the quote by Steinbeck, I've mentioned Steinbeck already, the American writer. The prayers of the millions, let's have a look at the quote. The prayers of the millions, how they must fight and destroy each other on their way to the throne of God. What's Steinbeck saying? How is it connected with the...
This is because the prayer of believers of different kind will conflict.
Yes.
He supported his Phillip Adams. Adams
Yeah.
about the conflict within and between faith and religion.
Yeah, that's a nice answer. Spot on. Spot on, Slogan. Absolutely correct. Spot on. So there's the truth, there's the correct answer, and you're right on the spot. So you're spot on. That's the metaphor.
I'm a little bit, but it takes me time until I reach to the answer, not quickly.
Sure.
I take time. About my age, I don't know. I don't
No, probably not. It's just, it's complex stuff. And I've mentioned before, we've talked about it, there's a lot of cultural elements in here, aren't there? And, names of people who,
to read word by word,
parties' names,
and translate and understand and absorb all this idea and try to connect it with the main idea.
Yep.
So,
and Hannah, by the sound of it, you've done work at home on this, and you've Googled, and that's fantastic. I would say one of the best things you can do is take Phillip Adams once a week, and it'll be on lots of different topics all the time. And that's a nice thing because he's moving around different topics, so you get different vocabulary and cultural information. And just do this unpacking of the puzzle. It's like, once a week some people do the crossword puzzle. It's like, think of it like a puzzle in a game, and just try to unpack it. You'll get so much out of that. Vocabulary, cultural knowledge, etc. Get used to metaphors and idioms. You'll learn little idioms and realise, that's been changed, etc. If you're aiming at that rich, high level of writing and reading, he's the weekly diet. Just as Year 12 kids do kind of weekly Phillip Adams for a good reason, takes them there. Yeah, so these are the sort of, so that's a nice answer, to one. The same depth of faith as anyone sitting in a pew. Now you do need to know what a pew means.
yeah, the heading of the priest, where the priest gives talk.
That's a good guess. That's called, though, the pulpit. The pulpit is the sort of raised little, often like a little stage area where the priest goes blah 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 to the group.
Tribune.
Tribune?
Yeah.
A tribune is like a representative of the people. Tribune.
And the place of representation.
Tribune. The
The
place in
place
front of the audience, like
Yeah, the stage.
the
The
stage.
stage.
We call it tribune.
Yeah. You'd call it
We
tribune.
call it as well.
Alright, in Russian and Persian. Right. Tribune, so... like spelled like that. Or, well, if you change the
Three
spelling.
form of
Maybe, yeah. Tribune is a Latin Roman word meaning a representative of the people. Not,
Speaker.
yeah, and he speaks or she speaks in Parliament or whatever. Yeah. So maybe the word has changed and means something a bit different from what it does in English. Yeah. But okay, the pew. Let's see, can we work it out? Though I get as confused by the counterintuitive discoveries of quantum mechanics as any Catholic by the mysteries of the Trinity, so he's saying I get confused by science just like a Catholic will get confused about the mystery of the Trinity. I have the same depth of faith as anyone sitting in a pew.
Bench.
That's right, a bench. And where is it going to be?
At the front.
In the church, isn't it? We can tell he's comparing, I've got the same amount of faith as, and it's going to be a religious person, so anyone sitting in now clearly they're going to be sitting in something in a religious place. Given he's writing about Christianity mainly, that long bench, not individual seats, but the bench in the church is a pew. So he's saying, look, I've got the same amount of faith as a religious person, that's just like my faith in science. 3, God's prose, tricky one. God's prose in the good book should have won him a Booker. Now, where's that?
Booker Prize?
Yeah, very good. What's the Booker Prize?
Nobel?
Done your research. Huh?
About the Nobel?
About a novel, that's right. Every year there's a prize for, in English, a novel written in English. That's right. Where is it? Where's it gone? Ah, yeah, right. Paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, where he's talking about all the artistic achievements of religion. Listen to the music of Bach, look at the art of the Renaissance, enjoy the beauty of language in sacred texts. So, like the Bible, he's saying, beautiful, but the beauty of the language. God's prose, now do you remember that word? I've also, prose is? Writing. Yeah, that's right. Writing that is not poetry. So you've got poetry and everything else is prose. Doesn't matter what genre, it could be a business letter, could be the Bible, could be whatever. That's all prose. So God's prose in the good book. What's the good book? Bible? That's right. Notice it's got capitals. It's a bit of slang. Yeah, the good book. Should have won him a Booker. So, Hannah, what do you think he's saying about his writing in the book, in the Bible?
Some of the words in the Bible or language equal to that found in literacy.
Literature.
Literature when prizes.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like high-level literature.
Mm-hmm.
It's poetic and beautiful as the best English writing. Yeah.
Especially, I can understand. He did read chapter 5, 6, 7 in Matthew. And
the Beatitudes.
the
Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit.
Jesus, our Lord
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, to the multitude on the mountain.
That's right. The Sermon on the Mount
Yes.
is how we say it in English. The sermon.
The
Probably a
sermon.
good cultural thing to know. Because there's only one.
The
The sermon. The sermon is like what the preacher gives, like the speech, the religious speech. The sermon on the Mount. The Mount of Olives. He gives the Sermon on the Mount. Yeah. And those are what we call the Beatitudes in Matthew. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. That one. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall inherit the kingdom of God. That stuff.
I know all this in Arabic, but in English I started to study the Bible in English recently.
Right.
And I know about the Quran very well from my country because part of my study to have my bachelor degree to study Quran and Hadith and Sunnah in subject Arabic. So I know most of the phrase of this phrases.
No, it's
And-
great to know that stuff.
And also I studied theology in the university. At university I studied theology for 4 years.
All right. Good,
It
rich
depends.
knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so get the King James Bible. That's the real poetic one. I've mentioned that
Okay.
before. If you want the real beautiful poetry, because it's 1611, Shakespeare's alive at the time, and he would have known those guys, the little team that translated from the Greek, and it's really beautiful stuff. It's hard to read that because it's that old form,
I have this.
but it's still beautiful. What you could do is have that, and then have a modern translation, and just sort of figure out the meaning, and then appreciate the poetry. That's what's nice. Yeah, so he's saying, you know, he's recognising that artistic value. Yeah. Number 4, we have discussed, remember? And there was that playing around with that imagery, the swastika and the cross and so on. Yeah, now 5, he's talking about Saudi Arabia, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think we're over time, there may be a plus, so what if we just leave those last 2? We'll do 10 minutes tonight. So we're going to start on time. And yes, the next one will be a Phillip Adams piece, and it will be designed like that, with your slightly easier questions first, and then the real nasty ones.
The one